Hello, everyone. We are so excited to welcome you to another episode of Ministering Over Fostering. Today, I am going to let Myra do our introduction of our very special guest.
We are very excited for our special guest, and we're just going to go all the way in. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, your career, and kind of give us a little spiel as to why we've invited you here today.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Saraiah Wesley, and I am a licensed therapist. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been working in the field for over about 13 years. I specialize in 0 to 5 work, and I am currently an assistant program director at one of our clinics for D.D. Hirsch Mental Health Services. So I am, I have a private practice with Rooted Foundation that I see clients, families, children, adults, also a foster mother and a new foster mother, and I'm on the journey. I've worked with foster families, and I'm now a foster family myself. And this is my experience, it being a ministry for me. And so I'm just really, look forward to kind of sharing my story and being able to let it be known. And if it helps someone, hopefully that, it's the goal. And I really love the name is Ministering Over Foster.
I definitely think that you and I are going to become best friends at some point, because there are two components to your profession that are very dear to my heart. So I'm actually finalizing my hours for my LMFT. I'm currently
Awesome.
in EMFT, and I will hopefully be finishing them by August this year. So I'm
Yay.
And aside from that, of course, what the fostering world brings about, and to see you doing both, I think that this is such an incredible journey, and we are super excited to have you here today and to even just hear your story. So I am interested, and I think we both are, is what led you to this career of being a therapist? Because that's a very particular type of career to pick, to walk alongside people who are hurting. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Michigan and spent a lot of my formative years in Michigan, but I never really knew much about mental health or therapy, like in the conventional sense of it. But I know that I really enjoyed working with my friends about the relationships. And I remember even when I had the epiphany, it was after I hung out with one of my girlfriends, and I told her, I'll get on the couch and then tell me what's going on, And so it was just like girl time, but I'm already pretending as an adult. I was pretending to be a therapist. And then a week later, it dawned on me. I was like, why not? Why not turn this into a profession? If it's something that I just, the pretend in me, the child that wants to play out a career comes out in me as an adult, that was something that I really, decided to lean into. And so I did my research, and I talked to my mom, and she was like, you should check out Fuller in California. And I was like, Fuller? And one, California. Two, I hadn't really heard of Fuller, but she wanted to go to Fuller when she was in her 20s and ended up getting married and didn't. And so then she was like, you should check it out and see if they still have a program. And so I did, and I had no prereqs for counseling because I did my undergrad in broadcast news and political science, and
Wow.
That was not the path that I wanted. I really wanted to help people, but I thought that I had to be Oprah in order to do it. So and I got into the field, was like, no, this is too stressful for me. And so in my, career search, my soul searching of what I needed to do and what I was called to do, I really felt the need to really help people. And I was geared towards marriage and relationships, couples. But I came out to California and went to Fuller and ended up getting married. And so I'm here to stay in California. But getting into the field, and I originally wanted to just do couples. That's what I went to Fuller for. That's what I was really passionate about. But then I got my practicum, I got placed at a child center that only did children. And I was just like, Lord, this is not why I came to California. I did not come to California to work with kids. I came here to work with couples. I was so disappointed. And I don't remember if it was a conversation or if it was like in my prayer time, but the Lord was just like, I've put you with these children for a reason. And I had to really reflect about my experience growing up as a child and being diagnosed with ADHD when I was in the first grade and having an IEP and really struggling, throughout my educational system. Learning was, a challenge for me. And that was something that's not why I came to California, was to help families that had similar situations, but that's where the Lord put me. And I really ended up falling in love with the work, even though it's not what I had thought I was going to be doing. I think God put me in different places that I had like no control over. I thought I had control about where I did my practicum, but I didn't. And, a lot of things happened that just led me to working with children. And in hindsight, I really love it and knew that there's a reason for it.
That's amazing. I feel like there's always a reason.
Yes.
Even if we question it, I mean, there's things that I feel like we're going through right now that I'm like, okay, Lord, why? Why are you doing this? But in every situation, there's that aha moment later on, like, oh, okay, that's why you did that.
Yes, yes.
His plan is better than ours.
Yes, and it's very interesting. Like we have in our mind, like there's a specific like path, and then it's almost like the Lord laughs at us and says, "If only you knew," right? Because I hear you talking about like how you got to this place, and Lakeisha and I have talked a lot about like our career choices, where we thought we were gonna go, and I think it's no coincidence too how sometimes the Lord uses our own pain and our own experience to then tell us like, you're going to make a career out of this and you're going to have your income, but you're also going to use your testimony as a ministry. And I don't work with children through therapy. I thought I was going to because I'm a social worker. So for me, the opposite. And I've actually seen that I'm aligning more towards women that have extensive complex childhood trauma. Now that they're older, they're trying to figure out like, what is all of this mess and chaos that I'm bringing and how do I untangle it? And I've started specializing in that childhood trauma and the of that for women, because I experienced that. And so such a beautiful way how God kind of puts those together and says, here, now go and serve. And it's not how we expect to do it.
There's like one of my favorite proverbs says, man makes plans in his heart, but God guides his feet. And that has been like, that has been my life.
Amen.
Love that though.
One of the things that we know about therapy and therapeutic services is that there's still a stigma attached. It's more well known, and I think more people are opening themselves to it. But even just culturally speaking, I come from a Hispanic family. We're Mexican. I'm the first generation of Mexicans that were actually born and raised here. My family, aunts and uncles, they still say I'm a doctor for crazies, and I'm like, I haven't seen a crazy person, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't. But that's the way they view it. And so even kind of explaining what I do and what it is that I'm doing, a lot of them, they don't understand. And so there's still so much negativity tied to it that we're trying to break. And I'm wondering what your experience has been to that, and why do you think therapy is so important from the experience that you have?
Yeah, well, when I told my pastor that I was going to move out to California to become a therapist, and his response was like, I don't know about therapy. Like, tell me you're going to California to find a husband, I'm cool. But, you're going, like, people don't go to therapy. They go to church. And that was the response I got. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm still going. So, and I think that especially in the church, there tends to be, a stigma and about mental health. One of my pastors said that you can't counsel a demon, but you can't cast out a mental health illness. I don't know how much I ascribe to that, because I do believe the healing power in ministry and God's ability to heal anything. So there's nothing that God cannot heal, that his blood does not touch. That, I definitely believe that. But with that, I also feel like that God has given us tools and of helping and building relationships with others. And one of the things I think that's really pertinent with some of the stigma in mental health is when it comes to church, sometimes we have a hard time connecting with God because our relationships with humans have been broken. And it's really hard for us to have a safe relationship with God because we're putting on our hurt, the character of some of the abandonment issues and stuff. We put that on to Jesus. And so part of, working as a therapist, I know that like I coincide the two as I help you heal your relationships with man, you can also take that to God, and it helps you build your trust in God. And so, and I think that's why it's, really important to be able to have room and openness for both, the part of your healing and your relationships, but also knowing like that not every therapist is for you. Some of the stigma is based on your own experience of having therapists that weren't good fit. As a therapist, I've had therapists I was like, yeah, I'm not going back. And, and so sometimes it's like your own experience can cause that stigma, but I encourage people to keep seeking until you find someone that really can give you what you need.
I just love the idea of healing. I think in general, it's all the components of healing, right? Like we can argue, particularly through the perspective of Christianity, that the Lord can heal physical ailments, but we still need to go to the doctor sometimes, right? Same thing with mental health. And I think that He does give us the wisdom and the tools to be in these professions for a reason. Otherwise, we wouldn't have access to this. And so healing is such a complex thing. And I love the way you intertwine it with we do, based on our relationships that we have. Sometimes that hinders our connection spiritually. And so they do go hand in hand. So thank you so much for bringing light to that, because I think that's how we start breaking the stigma, is just talking about some of these hard conversations. And sometimes there are pastors that still believe that this is not the right way, that just prayer and fasting is enough. And I do think that's enough, but sometimes the Lord wants you to do a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say to you, who knows, like the Lord could be sending that therapist your way to help cope with the situation.
Yeah, like a deeper understanding too of who you are, something that, sometimes you just need to have a deeper understanding of who you are and why you behave certain ways, why you think certain ways, where these perspectives came from, and how you can challenge some of those. So I completely agree. But I know you shared with us that you have opened yourself to becoming a resource parent, and we are very curious as to whatever you're comfortable sharing with us. So please know that. But what led you to that? Because that's another way of ministry as well. We're talking about ministry. And what led you to making that choice for you and your family? And then what part of that experience can you share with us today?
Yeah, it's one of those, like, you make your plans in your heart, but God guides your feet. And, me and my husband, we started to try to have children in 2016 and ran into different challenges and a lot of question marks. And I'm just the type of person that's like, let's just try everything. Like, I want a family, and I had to go, I think, there was a process where I was just like, you know what, like I'm accepting that it's not just the way that I thought, that I was going to get pregnant and have how many children we had. And I had to kind of accept that I might not have children that look like me or my husband, and it's like passing on the genetics. It was just like, I had to grieve passing on, like having a child that looks like me or has my voice, and really had to come to terms. But it wasn't something that I like grieved very long. It was just kind of one of the things, just like, well, okay, it's not that, but this is not the only way to build our family. And I remember I worked with a lot of foster children in the work that I was doing, and I remember like working with a kid, and I was just like, I could take you home, and and, and I won't, and I didn't.
Don't worry, Myra and I have had many situations where like, oh my goodness, I could totally be like your mom. I could totally take, I could totally adopt this child.
And I remember the kid, and I was just like, you know what? Like, and that was like sitting with and walking along this child. I was just like, that's when it really like hit my spirit that this was an option, and that this was like something that my heart wouldn't have a hard time attaching, or my husband. And, you know, so we talked about it and really kind of shared our thoughts about it. And, you know, actually, like, if we have our own kids, this is still something that we want to do. And I don't mean our own kids, but biological children. If we have our own biological children, this is something we still want to do to build our family, because our goal is really to build our family. And the ministry fostering isn't just the ministry, but I feel like having children in itself is the ministry. Like, that being our goal, it really doesn't, the means doesn't, like, to us, it was any way possible. I think that was something that was important for us, but also it came with a ton of challenges. It wasn't as simple. I think because I worked in the mental health field, I worked with tons of DCFS social workers, I've been to a lot of court hearings. I was like, I know the system. Let me just go through DCFS. And so we signed up with DCFS. And the week before we were supposed to have our home visit, our landlord at the time called us and said, oh, I want to move back in. And we hadn't been in the house a year. And so then it was like, okay, well, we have to put this on hold and go try to find a house. So we had to go move, and we ended up purchasing a house. And then once we purchased the house, and we were like, okay, let's start it up again. So then we did that. So it was probably maybe a year later, we were like, okay, let's get this application. So we signed up with DCFS, got finalized in 2019, in August 2019, and then didn't hear anything for 3 years, like not a word. I mean, the only time they called was to see if we could take kids that had COVID during the heat of 2 weeks into the pandemic. And no one knew what COVID was. And my parents lived in the home. And so I was just like, we couldn't risk. And so we couldn't say yes at the time. I don't think if we had said yes, I don't think it would have made a difference at that point. Every time we called them to see, okay, like, are we on the list? Is there anything wrong with our application? Why aren't we getting any foster placements? We got nothing. So then we got a call 3 years later saying that we need to renew and do a new home study and do all the things again. And I was like, no. I was like, you can close our application. Closed down with DCF, and we went to another foster agency and did the whole process, and which was a lot more work, and it felt like a lot more like fine lines, or like fine tuning. We had to do a lot more things to our house than DCFS required, and the process was a little bit more difficult. But as soon as our application ended, or we were approved foster parents, like even before we got the official "you're approved," we were getting calls for placements, and that was last year. So it has been 8 years of trying to build our family. In the midst, we did a ton of infertility treatments and all those things, but this was the plan that God had for us. And we were getting calls for sibling sets, and we got approved for 2, but for like infants and maybe a toddler. That's what we had space for in our house. But then we're like, okay, we need to actually get a bed. We need to figure out how to adjust the room that we have, because we keep getting calls for like an 8-year-old and a baby. It's like, okay, you can't put an 8-year-old in the crib. So the day that the bed arrived, we got a call for our little toddler guy that they were looking for a permanent placement. And we saw the picture and immediately was just like, he looks like my brother, and like he had very similar eyes, just from like a really small picture that wasn't the clearest, but I was like, we were just like, yes. And we got him at the end of January, and yeah, we're, going through the adoption process. And, so it's a really like, it's like one of those things where that it's rarely that easy to get a placement and then you're already moving towards adoption. And so, but like they're like, it's never been that easy. And I'm like, we've been doing this since 2016. So I do feel like the Lord has given and showing us grace and mercy in this process.
That's amazing. And so I can kind of relate to that. We have 4 boys that I have, bio boys. And then we still just felt the need, like we wanted to expand our family. So we adopted. And when we first were told, our plan, I should say, was to adopt one girl. But the Lord saw otherwise and was like, no, you're going to do 2. There was a lot of going back and forth, like, oh, we're going to place with you. Oh, we found another family that didn't have as many kids. Then that placement didn't work out. So then they reached back out to us. So that in itself, I felt like was the Lord's plan, because when we found out that, yes, they're going to proceed with us, we were open to siblings, but then when they kind of took it away from us through another placement, we really started having our hearts set on these sibling girls. And through that, I felt like the Lord made that desire a little stronger. I felt myself looking at things for little girls, 2 little girls. When they brought it back again, we were like, absolutely. And this is how I know it was meant to be. Their names, and this is something we were praying about for so long, but their names are one says God heard, and the other one means God answered. And these were their names. We did not give them these names. So that just lets me know, like, even your situation, it's very similar how they were, this child was placed with you and then you're moving to adoption so quickly. That happened to us too. As soon as they were placed, they were already moving quickly on a fast track adoption. So we just can't wait to hear that it was finalized so we can celebrate with you. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I relate to your story in a little bit of a different sense, and I don't share this very often, so I don't think a lot of our listeners know, but I have also struggled with infertility myself. My husband and I were married in June. It's going to be 11 years, and we started trying for children 2 years into our marriage. We found out that something was not happening, and so we found out that I was diagnosed with PCOS, and my ovums don't grow to its full potential maturity. We started going through some of that struggle, really kind of fighting for our own biological children as well. And we did a full year of treatment. We ended up getting pregnant with twins, and we lost them at 6 weeks. And then recently got pregnant again and lost the other pregnancy as well.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And so just hearing your story about the resilience that it takes, I'm so grateful that you shared your story with us today in this open and transparent way, because I think it can feel very lonely for us couples that are really struggling to have a family and not have the capacity to do that for whatever reason the Lord has decided. And for a long time, I think there was like all of the emotions of like confusion and anger and grieving and trying to understand what was happening, feeling like my body was working against me. And you go through all of these varied emotions when it comes to the struggle of wanting to have a family and that desire. And I remember very briefly going into my pastor's office, and we had already gone through the treatments. We had lost our first pregnancy. And I walked into his door and I knocked and I sat down and I said, I need answers. And he said, okay. And I said, can you tell me what I need to do or what prayer I need to make for the Lord to take this desire away? Because clearly he's not responding. And I remember in his such a gentle and beautiful way, he said, Myra, the Lord cannot take that desire away. That's what you were created for. And he said, but he can help you to understand what comes from this.
Mm-hmm.
And a very interesting thing that after that conversation, I sat with my husband and I said, I'm done. No more fertility treatments, all the picking and prodding and the way our bodies are exposed to that. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
Feel that. And I said, I'm done. I said, if the Lord is going to do a miracle with my womb, he's going to do it. And if not, I need to figure out what this means. The interesting thing that for us, it was never about adoption. It was always leading us to this agency, always leading us here. And my mother-in-law passed away in 2020. Lakeisha and I, the name behind SNL is after my mother-in-law, her grandfather. So Sandra and Lewis is in the name. She passed away, and Lakeisha and I decided to open this agency. Through this agency, I have met and we've been able to sit with so many different youth that are struggling and have no one, and Lakeisha and I have become that space for them. It's a little note that Lakeisha wrote to me one time, and I love her for this, and I have it on the wall, but it's a reminder. And she just said, thank you for being a mom to many. Those words have stood out to me in so many different seasons, because I was like, the Lord had something so different than what I imagined. And I don't know if having my own biological children would have led me to this. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever understand or if I'll ever get that answer to that question. But I know that my journey led me to this. And I'm here today. And so I'm just so thankful that you were able to share that story and how it led you to this space and to open your heart for this little one that's in your home and that you're going to be listening to. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think had all the things that we were trying ourselves, it wouldn't have led to the child we have. Like, it might have led to us fostering, but it might not have led to the one we have right now. And I think that like God knew that what he needed, and he knew he had a plan for him, and it was to be in our home. And he said, I have to do some, like, he put us, like, I'm not saying the Lord put us through this, but it was a lot of hurt and pain that we went through to get here, but he had a purpose for it. And I wouldn't want that child anywhere else but in our home. And it had all those other things taken course and happened. We also lost a child in a miscarriage at 9 weeks. And, had any of those things not happened, we wouldn't have had him in our home. In hindsight, really thankful for what God had done and how he shut the gate, I guess, so that we would be emotionally mature and able to really handle what it all takes to go through this process, because it is also, it's not the easiest choice. And I think one of the things that the Lord has been helping me with, I think, in my career, and specializing in 0 to 5, is that attachment is so important. And one of the things that I've heard a lot of parents say, well, I don't know if I can attach, because if they get taken away, then I can't handle that. And I'm like, the child needs that attachment way more than you do. And so one of the things that my prayer has been that the Lord, one, protects that part of my heart, that I don't get jaded, but also knowing that we will love the children that we have, and we will continue to love them, but we will be here for as long as they need us. And so if that's forever, or if that is for a few months, we're here for what they need. And it's about what the child needs, their need for attachment, their need for a secure and safe and loving environment, and not my need to be emotionally safe, because I'm not going to get that from this relationship. I get that from my relationship with the Lord, and I get that from my relationship with my spouse and my parent, and I'm not getting it from my child. I think that's something, as a foster parent, that has been something that I've been really prayerful for the Lord to protect in me, that I continue to have that heart because you get attached to the kids in your home, and that love and desire to be a mother is there, and so that it's not going away, right? It's not going away, and so that stays protected.
Yeah. And I think that's we hear that a lot. I don't want to get too attached. I said that a lot, to be honest, before I became a social worker. Going into this, it wasn't really just about fostering, it was fostering to adopt. Mm-hmm. And, we were very cautious about the cases that were presented to us. And even though during our journey, we really did want toddler to early school age children, we were presented with a case of a 5-day infant girl. And we said yes. But before saying yes, we were like, okay, I need to know more about this case. And this case basically went into that bio parents, have no desire for her. There are siblings who have been adopted already. Those adoptive parents have no desire to adopt her. So, again, knowing that what I know now as a social worker, there's always like red flags, but there's a process, parental rights being terminated, it's still, but back then it seemed like, okay, well, there's a lot of green lights to go and get this child, right? Let's just go ahead and do it. And a few months into our home, we get a call from the social worker saying the resource parent that has her, that is going to adopt her sibling, now wants her. And so as a resource parent, you're like, well, where was this resource family when the child was in the hospital for 5 days after birth? Like, where were they 2 months in, to the home? So during that time, it was a lot of frustration. Yes. You're bonding with this child, you know this child's routine at this course, and then now all of a sudden you're coming and picking up this baby at close to 11 at night, and that, honestly, I think I was like you, I'm done, we're not doing this process, right? Close my case, we're done, and let's just get back to what we know as normal. And there was a lot of hurt there, but we did move a little bit forward, and we fought for this little girl. And come to find out, the biological grandmother did not know that this child was born. And the Lord, I really do feel strongly that the Lord used us to voice that we really did want her, so that it would be brought to court, so the bio family could know that this baby existed. And she was placed back with the bio grandmother, and the bio grandmother adopted her. And so, we've had years of contact where we get to see through pictures that this child is functioning and, just thriving. But the Lord had to take us through some hurt for us to realize, hey, I'm using you, as a tool to get this child back to where she belongs. So thank you for bringing that up, because we do get that a lot. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can go through that. And I was the same way. But the Lord did show me, yes, you can do it. You can do this. I'm going to give you the strength that you need to accomplish this, and you're going to be fine.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard a lot. I've gotten a lot of, in my life, the Lord is like, this is going to be tough, but you will be okay.
Yes.
I think such a great time to segue into our next question, because you've kind of already started giving us some tips for resource parents about not being afraid of getting too attached. We want you to get too attached. That's our need. But what is some other advice that you can give to someone who is saying, I've been thinking about fostering or foster to adopt, I've just been thinking about opening my home? What do you think that could help them to finalize that decision?
This is not endorsed by the agency that I work from, but I will say, go to an agency, first of all. Do not try to do it on your own. through DCFS, I will say go to a foster care agency that has an extra set of eyes. The approval process might be more strenuous and difficult, but having that just protection and oversight and advocacy, having someone to actually, when there's problems with the social worker or you're not getting the communication you need, having someone, having our social worker contact the child social worker saying, hey, these things are amiss, and sometimes they respond better. And so then I think that's just like the first piece of advice. And I think too, especially with when it comes to attachment, and I think really looking at why do I want to do this? Is it because for am I looking for someone to love me or to take care of me in the future? Like really kind of looking at your motivations for doing this, because when you're working with children who have been through trauma, and when you are fostering, they're 100% going through trauma. Even if it is that 5-day-old that you took home, they went through trauma. The fact that they are needing to be in foster care, even if it's something that they've never witnessed, their body understands in the womb the trauma that was going on around them. And I will say that you have to check your motivations, because if you're going into fostering to get a child to love you, you might get a child that doesn't have the capacity to show, it's not safe for them to show that they love you. They might do everything might show that they hate you, but inside they are in love with you. They might not have that capacity. And so if you are looking for that, you might not get it. And it might be really hard for you and the child if that's something. And so really looking at those motivations and really looking, okay, if that's something, then that might be something that I need to go to therapy about while I'm fostering, so that I'm not putting undue responsibility on a child that can't meet a certain need, that it's not appropriate, or they don't have the capacity for it. And so I think that that's something that I feel like is really important for those that are thinking about doing fostering, and knowing that parenting, we're not going to be perfect. This process isn't a perfect one, and to be generous and gracious to yourself.
I love that. Thank you for pointing out that every child through the foster care system has experienced some form of trauma, because we do get that a lot. I want a baby because they haven't experienced trauma, and that's far from the truth. I mean, if you think about it, us as human beings, we've all experienced some sort of trauma. No one's perfect. So thank you for bringing awareness to that. And also the idea that as parents, we don't have to be perfect. I'm 43 and I'm still learning so many different things, and what makes it so great is just surrounding yourself with a lot of like-minded people, other women that you can learn from. That has been a beautiful experience. So just thank you. Thank you for bringing awareness to both of those sensitive topics there.
Yeah. And we do want to respect your time, and we are so grateful for all of the time you've given us. And so we have one final question for you today. As a therapist and or a resource parent, what are some of the things that have helped you kind of bring in a child into the home to kind of help them acclimate and go through that transition process that maybe resource parents are saying, I have a hard time, or I'm kind of fearful of that first kind of walk in, how do we transition? So we would love to pick your therapist brain, but also your resource parent brain. Share with us some of that.
Yeah, I'm trained as one of the things we do is child-parent psychotherapy, and we do a lot of helping children understand the connection to their behavior and connection to the trauma that they experienced. And we do that for 0 to 5. And people are like, okay, why are you talking to this baby and explaining things? But they, at certain developmental level, they understand what you're saying, even though they can't speak. But if they're not at the developmental level to understand what you're saying, they can feel what you're communicating in that moment. And one of the things I think was helpful for our transition, when we first did our first visit with our little guy, because it was a permanent placement, we visited the previous foster home for a week before we took him home with us. And on our first meeting, I asked her, I was like, okay, have you talked to him about what's going on? And she kind of was like looking at me like, he's like 16 months. Why would I explain to him? And I said, okay, well, tonight I want you to tell him who we are and why we came to visit and what's going to happen. And I kid you not, the next day when we went to visit him, he did not want anything to do with us. He didn't want to sit in my lap. He the other day he was kind of timid with us the first day. That second day, it was screams and hollers because he understood what she was saying. And he understood that meant that he was going to not be with her. And that was a really loving environment for him. And so it broke my heart to see him screaming and crying on holding him. And she left the room. And that transition was really hard. And he was, 16 months and he had been with her since he was 3 months old. And so that was a very hard transition, even at the young age that he was. But him understanding and being told what was going on is very important for young children. I think that when you are getting a foster child, helping them explain to them, okay, what happened? A lot of times they don't know why they're in your home. And we might assume that they understand or they don't know. And even if you don't have all the answers, sharing whether it's like you weren't in a safe environment or something happened and we just want to make sure that you're safe. And so for this time being, you're going to be in our home. Explaining and really helping the child know and understand what the purpose and what's happening for them. And knowing that they're going to act out. They're going to do things that might be really unsettling, but know that it's that transition and really being patient with yourself and with them and really assuring that they're in a safe environment and that they are okay. Because we don't know what the future is. We can't say that this is your forever home until you sign the dotted line. There's a certain level of assurance you can't provide, but what you can say is that right now you are in a safe and loving home and that you're okay.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important for the children placed in care to know. And like you said, he was 16 months, obviously understood something. And I know that personally, I've had children ask me questions like, why didn't the last family, keep me? Mm-hmm. And I think that to me, I think as social workers, we do need to be clear and letting the children know, if it's just a resource home that's only fostering, mm-hmm. we need to be clear with the children that this is a home that's they love you. They're a temporary home though, mm-hmm. until your bio parents, get the training they need to take you back, or until, we find an adoptive family for you. Because mm-hmm. if we're just placing kids in home after home after home, mm-hmm. and not even told, why they have to move or, any explanation mm-hmm. at all, they are holding this guilt that they did something.
Did something wrong, yes.
They did something wrong, exactly. Yes. So I think that is a call for us social workers to be more clear as explaining as to why we are placing them and why we are removing them.
I'm glad you said that, because kids will create a narrative. If you don't tell them, they'll create their own narrative. And usually it is the furthest thing from the truth.
Yes, absolutely.
And typically it is them focusing on, I must have done something
wrong.
And imagine to carry that for such a long time. And that wasn't even the case. This was just a family that wasn't open for adoption, and they were sitting temporarily, and to think I must have been the one, and to carry that narrative for the rest of your life or for however mm-hmm. long. So but thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom. I think you've blessed us today. I know personally your story blessed me, and I'm so grateful that you said yes to coming on today. I don't know for your therapy if someone is interested in therapy with you. I don't know how that works. If they're able to reach out to you, you can let us know how they can, because I'm sure someone's gonna fall in love with even your tone of voice. And so you can share that with us.
Yeah, you can go to my website at rootedfoundation.com, and there's a link for you to request a consultation and go from there.
Well, we will definitely put that on the episode as well, so that they can just click on the link and go directly to you if someone is interested. But I don't know, Lakeisha, are there any final words before we let her go and get back to her day?
Yeah, I mean, just thank you for blessing our listeners with so much helpful information and basically saying things that we hear a lot that often go unsaid. Thank you for bringing those sensitive subjects up.
Yes. I really like knowing what it means to have a foster care agency come alongside. I'm grateful for what you guys do, and it makes a difference. And yeah, it's just, you guys do amazing work. So I really thank you for that.
Well,
thank you.
Much. Again, I think if we weren't short on time, we could probably sit with you for
yes.
yes.
A meeting for you to come and have coffee with us at our office, just because we absolutely love this day and this Ministering Over Fostering episode. But we want to thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us. And we also want to thank all of our audience for coming in and sitting with us at another Ministering Over Fostering episode. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.